When the first silt black seeds fell onto the banks of the flooding Nile, the people of Kemet already watched the river's movement with reverence and dread. The river's return each year swept away what was, leaving everything renewed except they noticed the memories of those who had gone. Graves decayed, shadows lingered in stories, but bodies once so loved, so powerful, so invested with the meaning of life, dissolved into the soil or were scattered by hungry jackals. A sage sat beside a freshly sealed tomb, his fingers tracing intricate designs on a shard of pottery. It was a question whispered among priests, artisans, and those who waited in the half-light of funerary chambers: could a body last beyond its death? If it did, could it summon back its soul, navigate the perils of Duat, and see the fields of reeds again? So, the small mastaba, a humble mound above the grave, was built, sturdy and intentional. At first, it was little more than a bench, but the mastaba was a promise, a bulwark against forgetting, a first scaffolding bridging the living and the dead. Each year, the shape grew in ambition. One generation dared to stack stone upon stone. Another shaped bricks into inclined tiers, each a calculated challenge to collapse. Somewhere in these evolving forms, a thought began to take hold: if the soul's journey was to be protected, the body required a home strong as mountain roots. The architects became storytellers as well as builders. They watched the flocks of ibis pass overhead, considered the sun's unending circuit, and wondered if stone could mimic such reliability. What if they could argue with eternity, not with words, but with mass and mathematics? Soon, the silhouette of the world changed. Pharaoh Djoser employed Imhotep, a man with clever hands and a gaze like the horizon. Imhotep saw that nothing survived the floods except the river itself and the rocks bordering its path. So Imhotep imagined a fusion of both: a growing mastaba, tiered high, each level reaching upward, each block shaped by sweat and intention. The step pyramid rose over Saqqara with awkward beauty. It was the first answer to a prayer made of geometry. Workers dragged limestone as the sun blazed, pausing only to drink river water or whisper invocations to the gods. They knew, even as their backs bent, that they were building for something beyond comprehension. Each block promised a tomorrow, the day when lost kings would awaken and judge the world anew. Later pharaohs demanded still more: smoother sides, sharper lines, grander scale. The true pyramid was hammered from doubts, errors, and dreams of permanence. A monument could outlast even a name. Yet its power rested not only in stone, but in the idea that human longing threaded through centuries could reshape the earth itself. The Nile continued its eternal cycle, rising, retreating, returning. But now, as the waters drew back, the pyramids grazed the sun on the horizon, a reminder that the ancient Egyptians' debate with mortality was carved forever in the memory of the desert, their argument with eternity written in stone. At the dawn of Egypt's third dynasty, the kingdom buzzes with the hum of change. The Nile flows as always, but in Memphis tradition is about to shift. Djoser, a ruler ambitious and restless, dreams of immortality not only for his soul, but for his name. The old tombs, made of mud brick that crack and crumble, seem too ephemeral, too human. Djoser summons Imhotep, his chief architect and a man renowned for his intellect, one who blends science with art. In the darkness of his study, Imhotep pores over plans and old designs, considering the limits of mud and the promise of stone. One night, he sketches something unheard of: a tomb that rises, a structure composed of superimposed layers, each set atop the last. When Djoser sees the drawings, his eyes widen. Imhotep explains the tomb will not merely encase the dead king, it will allow his soul to ascend, step by step. Each level of the pyramid beckons like a staircase to the heavens. The pharaoh agrees, and they begin. Hundreds of laborers haul limestone from quarries. The sun beats down, and the desert air stings their throats. Imhotep stands beside them, measuring, calculating, adjusting. The first layer is set, then another, and another. The pyramid expands upward, not outward. Rumors spread through the kingdom: Imhotep and Djoser are building something never seen before. At night, Imhotep walks among the stones, tracing the path his king would take after death. He muses: will the gods accept this bold climb? Will the dead rise, instead of being hidden below? Months pass, the step pyramid looms over the fields, dwarfing all that came before. Priests argue, old artisans grumble, yet curiosity wins over skepticism. People come from distant provinces to gaze at the rising monument, watching its shadow stretch across history. On the day the pyramid is completed, Djoser arrives. He places his hand against the cold stone, feeling its permanence. Imhotep stands beside him, awed by the outcome of his imagination made real. Instead of fearing death, the pharaoh smiles, believing he will now ascend toward the celestial gods. This innovation is more than a new tomb, it is a declaration. Future kings will follow. The step pyramid becomes the model, the promise of a royal soul rising skyward. Imhotep, once a humble architect, gains legendary status, his name whispered in awe. And so, Egypt's landscape is changed forever. The king's soul will never again lie flat beneath the desert sand. In the golden sands of ancient Egypt, the ambition of the pharaohs soared as high as the midday sun. The step pyramid, with its staggered layers, had stood as a monumental achievement and indicator of ingenuity. Yet, within the courts of Pharaoh Sneferu pulsed a restless urge to reach for something even grander, something smoother, something that embraced the heavens with elegance and purpose. The architects assembled, measuring and arguing over limestone cubes under the gaze of the god-king. Imhotep's initial vision, while remarkable, still showed the marks of its origin. The people called for a more perfect form, and Sneferu listened. He sought to embody divine order not with steps, but with seamless slopes that would mirror the sunlight and the eternal journey of the soul. The first grand attempt rose in Dashur, its core swelling with hopes and calculations. Yet somewhere in the climb, errors crept in, the angle was too steep, the weight too great. As stones began to shift and cracks veined the lower chambers, the builders panicked. To save their creation, they changed the approach midway, and the pyramid bent, transforming its profile from an aspiring triangle to a tilted, sloping figure, a testament to human limitation and improvisation. The people called it the bent pyramid. It stood, but it was not yet perfection. Unbowed, Sneferu commanded a new start. The lessons carved by failure sharpened their hands and minds. The architects lowered the angle, reinforced the base, and recalculated each block's position. This time, the structure rose true, each limestone block stacked with unwavering precision. As it neared completion, the rays of the setting sun kissed its sides, unbroken and smooth. This red pyramid, crowned with a golden capstone, caught the sunlight and shone. It was more than a tomb, its faces were ramps for the pharaoh's soul, guiding him skyward, blending stone with spirit. With this achievement, the blueprint for eternity was born. The smooth-sided pyramid became a symbol throughout the land, adopted and scaled to even grander proportions. No longer just monuments of death, they became ladders connecting earth and heaven, each side a pathway for the divine. And so, from failure emerged beauty, from human error, celestial order. The evolution from rough stone to gleaming slope mirrored the Egyptian belief: ascension is not a single leap, but a journey of striving shaped by hands, dreams, and sun-kissed stone. High above the golden sands, the Great Pyramid of Khufu rises like a silent witness to history. Its edges, sharp and unwavering, point steadfastly to the four corners of the world: north, south, east, and west. The air shimmers with heat as workers, thousands strong, gather at dawn. They are not mere laborers, but skilled artisans, mathematicians, and architects drawn from the river valleys and bustling towns. Each holds a purpose in their calloused hands, their eyes trained to the horizon. Over 2 million stone blocks, each weighing as much as a small car, are shaped by hands that understand stone, sun, wind. A foreman consults a table marked with strange symbols, an ancient calculus glimpsed from the movements of the stars. There is order in the chaos, a hierarchy as precise as the pyramid's geometry. Atop a ramp, overseers watch the blocks slide into place, measuring alignment by the shadow of the midday sun, and calculations chanted aloud. Silence falls before each stone is set, as if the workers are listening for the breathing of the earth. Far from the site, priests track the passage of Sirius across the night sky, recording the moment she first appears above the eastern horizon. In the king's chamber, Khufu himself broods over maps and scrolls. He does not see the labor, but he knows its necessity. The pyramid is not only his tomb, it is a pronouncement. It proclaims that his people have harnessed nature, tamed the flood, measured the heavens, crafted unity from chaos. Months became years, children grow old in the shadow of the rising monument. Jealous rivers threaten with floods, but the workers chant invocations that echo through canals and draw the water into orderly irrigation. Disputes are settled under the stern gaze of scribes whose pens wield as much power as the chisel. One afternoon, as the summit nears completion, a storm rolls in from the west, rare, violent. Lightning strikes the highest point, and rumors ripple through the camp: the gods have judged their work. When the sun returns, it bathes the pyramid in gold. The workers marvel, but the astronomers note the phenomenon in their records, analyzing the angle, the season, the meaning. Years later, Khufu dies. His burial chamber lies deep within the pyramid, hidden beneath stone and secrets. The monument stands more than a tomb. It embodies the intelligence of a people who aligned heaven and earth, who calculated the stars and the stones, who believed and dared to organize the impossible. The Great Pyramid endures, long after individual names fade. It whispers to the ages, here, humankind united belief, knowledge, and power, shaping the world and forever reaching upward. In the blazing heat of the ancient Egyptian sun, thousands of workers made their way to the foot of Gizeh's great limestone mountains. For generations, stories would claim these pyramids were forged in the misery of slavery, yet history, freshly uncovered by archaeologists brushing sand from old bones and worn tools, began to tell another tale. Each morning, the village by the riverbank hummed with life. Men and women awoke to the clatter of bread rising, the laughter of children bustling through camps, and the distant call of overseers not with whips, but with instructions and encouragement. Among them was Amun, a stone hauler whose weathered hands told of seasons spent shaping something far greater than himself. Amun worked alongside his friend Hizira, who limped from an old injury, a broken leg mended by the healers of the workers' quarters. They grinned at each other as they flexed their arms, competitive about their daily totals. Their rations, like fresh bread, figs, and garlic, awaited at midday, taken in the shade of towering ramps. Stories told of royal physicians tending wounds and priests leading ceremonies that sanctified the labor. Days were long, but Amon's sweat mingled with pride. The overseers, scribes, and architects walked among them, checking the layout, running their hands over the gleaming white blocks. We build for the gods and for eternity, their leaders reminded them, our king's soul will rise on these stones. At night, fires burned in the workers' quarters. Songs rose and drifted past unfinished halls, where names were etched by the laborers on hidden stones. Amon's uncle, now laid to rest beyond the pyramid's shadow, was honored with burial rites. They buried their dead near the mighty monument, a privilege denied to slaves, a sign of respect for what their hands had created. Years passed, and as each block nested perfectly on the last, the pyramid grew, and so did the collective spirit of those who built it. It was not punishment that drove them, but a bond stronger than fear, a shared purpose, uniting masons, bakers, medics, and engineers in the greatest national project of their time. When the last stone was set and the capstone glinted in the sun, Amun, Hizira, and their companions stood back, eyes shining. They knew this monument was not a relic of cruelty, but a testament to faith, community, and the enduring power of belief. The pyramids rising defiantly against the sky would forever echo the hope and unity of the people who raised them. The dim corridor stretched before him, silent except for the echo of his footsteps. Nakti, a young artist tasked with inscribing the walls of the Great Pyramid's interior, was struck by the measured precision of every element. He paused, running his fingers along the limestone blocks, feeling the cool smoothness beneath his touch. He wondered if those who devised this structure, so grand but secretive, truly understood what they were building, the bridge between earth and sky. Down a corridor so narrow that even Nakti had to turn sideways, the passage opened abruptly into a chamber. In the middle sat a stone sarcophagus surrounded by walls adorned in constellations. He gazed upward and marveled at the pinpoint holes in the stone, aligned perfectly to allow the starlight to filter through at specific times. It was as if the architects willed the cosmos into the chamber's heart, a deliberate portal for the pharaoh's soul. The priests had told stories of the corridors, how each turn, each narrowing, forced the soul along a path of trials, towards redemption or ascension. Nakti had scoffed at first, but now, seeing how the roots twisted and closed, opening only for those who should enter, he began to believe. Every stone had meaning, every angle was more than geometry, it was destiny pressed into rock. He watched old Teddy, the chief builder, inspect the stonework. Teddy's hands trembled, but his eyes were sharp as he advised the workers on adding a chamber precisely angled so its passage would point to Orion's belt. This was no mere tomb, it was a cosmic engine. Nakti's admiration grew, for every laborer who carried blocks, every artisan who etched ancient spells, was participating in a ritual that transcended life. When the work was done, Nakti stood at the pyramid's central room, the burial chamber. It was quiet, an almost sacred hush. The walls did not just tell stories, they mapped the journey from flesh to starlight, from earthbound king to celestial soul. The architecture was not for the living, it was for the spirit, a guide, a safeguard, a vault for eternity. He left through the winding corridors, feeling both lost and found, the pyramid's purpose clear and mysterious at once. Outside, the sunset bathed the stone in gold as birds wheeled overhead. He wondered if one day, his own soul would walk these halls, following the narrow paths built so that not just the pharaoh, but anyone who understood, could pass from human sight into the infinite sky. Long ago, under an unyielding sun, the vast pyramids rose above the Egyptian earth, solid and shimmering with white limestone brilliance. Their peaks pointed to heavens, echoing the divine ambitions of pharaohs whose power seemed eternal. Priests and artisans orchestrated an age of grand construction, where bronze tools struck stone day and night, resources marshaled from a disciplined, unified state. With time, the endless river of labor and wealth began to dwindle. Floods grew unpredictable and harvests sparser. Regional lords, sensing the weakening grip of the throne, carved out territories for themselves, their ambitions clashing against the old order. The magnificent flow of grain, copper, and manpower that once converged at Giza trickled to a cautious, wavering stream. In this climate, each new pharaoh faced the legacy of his ancestors not as a duty but a dilemma. The stones of the larger pyramids loomed over their reigns, silent witnesses to changing fortunes. Where once the command to construct meant unquestioned compliance, now it raised anxious questions: where would the wheat come from, whose fields must lie fallow while men toiled for centuries? Yet, the faith endured. The journey beyond death remained a certainty, inscribed on tomb walls and recited in every festival. But as costs soared, constructions faltered. Pharaohs opted for modest pyramids, still geometric but diminished, their limestone mantles replaced by mud brick, symbols of aspiration within limited means. Occasional bursts of grandeur attempted to revive the old spirit but paled compared to the Golden Age. In the villages and towns, craftsmen and laborers spun tales. "My grandfather helped build those," they would say, pointing to distant silhouettes cresting the horizon. Stories mingled with awe and resignation. As generations passed, the colossal monuments grew remote, objects of reverence and nostalgia, far removed from daily hardship. Instead of stone mountains, funerary complexes shrank and diversified. Rock-cut tombs nestled into hillsides, and smaller mastabas dotted the necropolis. The state's resources shifted to defense, irrigation, and survival. The pyramid persisted only as an idea printed on seals, painted on funerary papyri, evoked in prayers. A king's pyramid now became a symbol rather than an edict written in stone. Through these gradual changes, a civilization revealed the ebb and flow of ambition and resource. The monuments once announced power with mute confidence, now they testified, wordless but enduring, to an era's transformation. The pyramid, in both form and memory, had journeyed from necessity into symbol, reflecting not only the limits of earthly rule but the persistence of hope for eternity. The desert sun blazed across the silent sands, illuminating colossal monuments of stone. The Great Pyramid, casting its shadow for miles, was the centerpiece of an empire and a testament to a pharaoh's divine power. In those early days, people believed that the afterlife could be achieved not only through good deeds, but through grand acts of construction and eternity carved into limestone, reaching towards the gods. Generations passed and new rulers ascended the throne. Each king, eager not to be forgotten, commanded his own sacred tomb to rise from the earth. Families, architects, and an army of workers gathered once more, shifting blocks across the river to a rhythmic chant. Yet, for all the familiar effort, something was changing. Pharaoh Mary Ray, still in the bloom of youth, wandered through the halls of his court as tensions flared. The empire's reach shrank, and dust gathered on the distant trade routes. Royal advisors discussed grain shortages and uprisings in delta towns. The mighty treasury that had once overflowed now seemed a trickling stream. Mary Ray summoned his architect, old Hemu, whose beard had grown as long as the reigns of his predecessors. Hemu's hands trembled over the new tomb's blueprint. The plan was modest, a squat pyramid, hardly bigger than a nobleman's mastaba. Mary Ray frowned. His ancestors' monuments touched the sky, but the coffers were empty. "Is it enough?" Mary Ray asked, his voice wavering. Hemu bowed. "The stones we lay will point to your remembrance, but greatness now is measured differently, my king." In the years that followed, smaller pyramids scattered the desert. Some stood incomplete, abandoned as rebellion surged or famine bore down on the land. Families still tended the shrines, leaving offerings and prayers, but stories drifted through city streets now. It was not the size of the tomb, but the piety of the king that mattered. The afterlife, people whispered, had more to do with the heart than with stone. A scribe in Thebes wrote down a new proverb: "He who remembers the name of the dead and offers water, preserves his spirit forever." The centuries sped by, and the once imposing pyramids grew to mere symbols. Artists etched them onto amulets, priests referenced them in ritual, and travelers told tales of ancient kings and their desert mountains. Pharaohs built with what they had, but soon even their memory outweighed their monuments. In the shadow of the worn-down stones, a child traced the outline of a pyramid in the dust. He looked up at his grandmother, who smiled and began to tell him of the old ones, the kings who once dreamed of eternity, and how those dreams still drifted on the desert wind, as light as hope, as enduring as belief. Long ago, across seas and centuries, Greek travelers set foot on Egyptian soil. Their sandals sank into the hot sand as their eyes rose to the impossible geometry of the pyramids. These stone mountains, aging under the desert sun, seemed to the Greeks embodiments of ambition and engineering. They scrawled journals filled with awe, measuring the angles and counting the stones, marveling at human prowess, but puzzled over the purpose. Curiosity led them to ask the locals, but language tangled the truth. Myths spun around the pyramids, tales of kings and giants, of treasures entombed. Whispered stories entwined functional explanations with fantastical embellishments. The Greeks carried these legends home, their wonder unbroken but the meaning warped. Centuries later, Roman travelers arrived with their imperial confidence. They took their turn before the pyramids, standing in the shadow of the colossal structures. Treating them as wonders on a list, the Romans cast the pyramids as trophies, proof of the ancient world's grandeur, stage props for their own narratives. To most, the pyramids were spectacles of stone, not gateways or spiritual machines. Translations of Egyptian hieroglyphs failed to capture nuances. Scholars argued, copied passages, assigned new interpretations to old symbols. With each retelling, the sacred ritual, the conversation with death that the pyramids represented, slipped further from reach. Through word of mouth, legend, and mistranslation, the pyramids passed into the realm of curiosity. Their true voices muffled, they stood alone amid the sands, wonders misunderstood, mysteries repurposed, curiosity monuments where the meaning faded, echoing quietly through time. The desert wind carried data instead of dust now. Surveyors in sun-bleached hats and scientists in lab goggles trekked up the ancient limestone, trailing cables and tripods like the curious offspring of old-world explorers and cutting-edge technocrats. At sunrise, their tents flapped in the breeze, satellites blinked overhead, and tablets flickered with shifting grids. All eyes and theories focused on the pyramids, as though concentration alone could finally unwind their riddles. No chisels scraped at sandstone, nor picks chipped at the mortar. This was a new age. LiDAR mapped the incline of every stone. Muon detectors slept quietly inside chambers, listening for cosmic particles that might trace the outline of something unknown, while thermal cameras patiently waited for the sunrise to heat the blocks and betray hollows within. Only the camels seemed to observe with patient, amused disbelief as the pyramids again became a laboratory. When the first scan of the king's chamber's north wall returned, a buzz rippled through the research tent. A void, right where none was supposed to exist. Days became nights as laptops glowed and translators compared hieroglyphs to architectural diagrams, trying to fit this new puzzle into what was known. But with each dataset, the picture widened, a corridor here, a cavity there, a shaft narrow as a dagger, slicing through the heart of stone. To each question answered, 10 more emerged, echoes in the dark, reminding the living of the dead's ingenuity. A small team assembled for the moment, their faces a patchwork of hope and skepticism. Clara, a field engineer, read the latest imaging on her tablet. Dr. Hassam, the Egyptologist, squinted at a threadbare blueprint. They debated, a ceremonial passage, an air shaft, or simply a trick of ancient geometry. Yet the scan did not flinch. The void was real, indisputable as the sand beneath their boots. Night fell, casting long shadows from the pyramid's flanks. The team walked back to their camp, excitement stitched with humility. The pyramids, silent, eternal, watched their retreat. It had given them a clue, but not an answer. A camera trap flashed in the dark, capturing only stone. A new article would be published by dawn, reporting another breakthrough, another mystery. The world would read, marvel, and speculate. For every modern eye pressed against its veil, the pyramid offered a new enigma in return. It was as though the past had been designed not merely to be discovered, but to be endlessly rediscovered, a monument to the idea that some secrets grow deeper the more they are revealed. The wind whistled through the scaffolding, carrying the quiet laughter of stone. Science moved forward, question by question, forever circling the silent heart at the center of the world's oldest riddle. In the haze of modern fascination, theories swirl around the ruins of Egypt. Some whisper of extraterrestrials, others of lost super civilizations wielding technology beyond imagination. The pyramid blocks, stacked with precision, become a canvas for anxiety as we grapple with the idea that the ancient world accomplished feats our own era finds daunting. Each generation revisits these monuments, struggling to accept the simplest explanation. Ancient Egyptians, with all their humanity, built the pyramids through ingenuity, perseverance, and collective effort. Yet, for many, this answer feels unsatisfying. Our sense of superiority nourished by satellites, smartphones, and electric cars falters before the stone mysteries. The notion that people, long ago and without what we now define as advanced tools, could design and raise such wonders unsettles the modern mind. As we look closer, the appeal of supernatural explanations becomes clearer. They provide easy comfort for those troubled by the limits of our understanding. Aliens, after all, fill in the blanks left by historical gaps. The possibility of secret ancient technologies soothes the wound of cognitive dissonance. These stories say as much about our era's psyche as they do about the ancient world itself. But the evidence remains: ancient humans were capable of extraordinary achievements. Ingenious engineering, trial and error, and an unrelenting drive toward greatness produced monuments that defy time. The pyramids, then, are not testaments to beings beyond Earth, they are testaments to the remarkable imagination and ambition of humanity. In accepting this simple truth, we face not just the accomplishments of antiquity, but a challenge to believe in the capabilities of our species. The pyramids don't just stand in the desert, they stand at the intersection of wonder, anxiety, and admiration, a mirror reflecting both the brilliance of ancient Egypt and the insecurities of modern minds. It was dawn on the Giza Plateau, and the sunlight fell across three ancient sentinels. The pyramids stood, as they had for millennia, their edges worn by wind and sand, their stones warmed by mornings innumerable. Tourists clustered at the base, cameras ready, wondering about the men who had commanded their construction, about the thousands who had labored under the desert sun. There is a myth that the kings sought immortality from these monuments, that they wished to inscribe eternity into the stone so that their souls might never fade. But eternity is a trickster. Pharaoh Khufu, whose tomb lies within the largest pyramid, was a man obsessed with the afterlife. He envisioned endless life and, in pursuit, marshaled the might of a nation. Artisans shaped stones, mathematicians calculated angles, priests whispered incantations. Yet, the vegetation of Khufu's memory has grown wild and warped. In life, he was feared and revered; in death, he survived only as a shadow cast by his pyramid. It is not technology that made the pyramids endure. The tools were primitive, the methods laborious. Backs broke, lives were lost, and the desert was unforgiving. What forged the pyramids' immortality was belief. Belief that a mere man could defy the entropy of time, that stones could carry his name beyond the horizon of his breath. Belief was not the sole property of the royal, it flowed through the hands of every laborer, every artisan, every architect who staked their effort upon something larger than themselves. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell. The pyramids became less about kings and more about echoes. Napoleon stood before the pyramids and mused about their age. Modern archaeologists crawl through their chambers, turning dust into data. Tourists gaze, feeling small and awed. The pyramids are not proof of technological supremacy. They are proof of humanity's power to imagine permanence. Belief is what truly endures. It has moved stones, shaped nations, and painted the world. In a universe defined by decay, where everything crumbles, humanity dares to carve its dreams into the bedrock. The pyramids did not make Khufu immortal, they made civilization unforgettable. Each stone whispers that technology is fleeting, but belief is eternal. These monuments are the product of a people who, for a moment, refused to accept impermanence and made their faith a testament for all time.